Welcome to the Runner's Paradox podcast. We're here to unpack the surprising truths and, the contradictions inherent in chasing miles.
And there's this one phrase, isn't there, that felt smooth. It's like the holy grail for runners. It sounds so good, feels so good.
Oh, absolutely. It implies everything's working perfectly, flow, efficiency, like you're just gliding.
But that's the seductive part, because when it feels that good, we just stop asking questions.
Yeah.
We trust the feeling implicitly. And that can be where the problems start.
You know, I had a run just recently that really hits this home. I was ramping up mileage, feeling fantastic. Everything clicked, easy pace, felt fast, fluid. I genuinely thought, okay, this is it. I finally nailed my optimal form.
The peak feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then maybe a week later, bam, out of nowhere, this intense IT band flare up on my left side just completely sidelined me for a bit.
Wow.
And looking back, that smooth run, it wasn't a sign of good mechanics at all. It was just my body getting really good at hiding an underlying weakness, probably compensating like crazy, until it just couldn't anymore. It hit that breaking point.
And that experience you had, it mirrors so perfectly what's explored in Chapter 14 of The Runner's Paradox.
Yeah.
That's what we're really getting into today, calibrating a smooth running experience.
Right.
The author, Ying, talks about her own journey with this. Years of competitive running, super fast, highly efficient by all metrics. She thought she'd found that perfect flow state.
Yeah, the feeling was there for her.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then she saw photographs of herself running, that objective, kind of stark reality check. And she was shocked.
What did she see?
What felt smooth and effortless looked, well, objectively flawed. She noticed significant asymmetry, like excessive upper body rotation fighting against her lower body trying to move straight ahead. Her right knee was caving inwards. It was, as she put it, a kind of chaotic conflict hidden beneath that feeling of speed.
That's fascinating and scary. It really makes you question that fundamental assumption we all have that our bodies are naturally trying to optimize for, long-term health and sustainability.
Exactly. Are
Yeah.
they? Or are they optimizing for something else entirely? So our mission today really is to explore how we bridge that gap. How do we get what feels smooth to actually align with what's mechanically sound, what's efficient, and what's actually sustainable for the long haul?
Because when feeling and reality diverge like that,
Injury often isn't far behind. It's almost inevitable. And just a reminder for everyone listening, this whole conversation is inspired by The Runner's Paradox. You can find more details and grab a copy at therunnersparadox.com.
Okay, so let's really unpack this. Why does this happen? Why does our body give us this rewarding feeling of smoothness even when potentially we're masking weaknesses or even doing damage? It feels like a bit of a mind game.
It really does, doesn't it? It boils down to the body's fundamental programming. It's incredibly smart, constantly managing these three interconnected systems: the neuromuscular system, the cardiovascular system, and importantly, the psycho-emotional system. It's always calibrating.
Right.
But here's the crucial distinction. Its primary goal, its default setting, is energy efficiency. It wants to eliminate jerkiness, sudden movements, anything that costs extra metabolic energy right now.
Okay, so it's about immediate cost saving.
Precisely. Long-term joint health, preserving cartilage, avoiding chronic strain patterns. That's, let's say it's lower on the immediate priority list compared to just keeping you moving forward as economically as possible in this moment.
So using my example, if my right glute medius is weak, the body doesn't necessarily wave a red flag saying, hey, fix this imbalance. Instead, its first instinct is, what? Find a workaround.
Exactly. Find the path of least resistance to maintain that smooth, cyclical forward motion. It compensates. Your nervous system is brilliant at figuring out how to achieve the task, running smoothly, by recruiting other muscles or slightly altering joint angles.
So that feeling of smoothness isn't necessarily a sign of perfection. It could just be a sign of really effective compensation.
That's often what it is. A beautifully orchestrated, complex, multi-joint compensation strategy that papers over significant weaknesses or structural issues. Think of it like driving a car with a slightly deflated tire. The suspension works harder on the other corners to keep the ride feeling smooth.
For a while, anyway.
For a while. It looks and feels stable, but the underlying stress on certain parts is building up. It's just not sustainable indefinitely.
Can you give us another example of this, where the body clearly picks efficiency over maybe structural health?
Sure. Think about running on uneven surfaces, like transitioning from pavement to a gravel path or a trail. What happens instinctively?
You tense up a bit, your stride changes.
Right. Research shows runners naturally increase their leg stiffness. It's a neuromuscular adjustment. By stiffening the leg, You reduce the amount of work the ankle joint needs to do to adapt to every little variation in the ground.
Oh, okay.
It helps maintain that continuous cyclical action without relying so much on slower visual feedback to micromanage foot placement. It feels smoother, more coordinated, lets you keep your pace up,
Yeah.
but that increased stiffness and altered joint loading, while fine for a short stretch, can, over time, contribute to things like Achilles issues, plantar fasciitis, or shin splints if it becomes a chronic pattern, or if the underlying structures aren't robust enough.
That makes total sense. The body's just focused on the immediate problem. Don't stumble. Keep moving forward smoothly. The long-term wear and tear is a secondary concern in that moment.
Precisely. And this leads us right into these hidden inefficiencies. It's fascinating and a bit disconcerting that studies consistently show even elite runners, people who look incredibly graceful, almost poetic in their movement.
Yeah, the ones you watch and think, that's natural talent.
Right. Even they can be hiding biomechanically detrimental patterns, things that the feeling of smoothness completely masks. We're talking about maybe excessive impact forces, too much upper body rotation, which bleeds energy sideways, significant asymmetries between the left and right side, or even just a cadence that's not quite optimal for their specific body and speed.
You mentioned asymmetry. I think you called it the illusion of symmetry in the book. That feels like a really sneaky one, responsible for so many of those stubborn, one-sided injuries.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly common. Let's say you have some residual weakness from an old injury, maybe a calf strain that never fully resolved, or just generally weaker hip abductor muscles on one side.
Okay.
Your body, again, wanting to maintain smooth forward motion, will subtly shift the workload.
Yeah.
The healthier, stronger leg starts doing more of the propulsion, more of the stabilization.
Without you noticing.
Often, yes. The effort might feel balanced because the brain equalizes the perceived exertion, but the actual physical load, it's becoming unevenly distributed.
Yeah.
The weaker leg might become more of a passive participant, just kind of swinging through, while the good leg is working overtime.
So back to my IT band. If I felt balanced right up until it flared up on the left side, it's quite possible the root cause wasn't even on the left side. It could have been my body compensating for years for, say, a weaker right hip, silently overloading the left IT band.
That's a classic scenario.
Yeah.
Textbook, really. We
Yeah.
see it all the time. Stress fractures, piriformis syndrome, chronic Achilles issues, IT band friction manifesting on the stronger side because it's been picking up the slack, often for years.
Wow.
And the perceived comfort, that feeling of smoothness, acts like this incredibly effective denial mechanism.
Yeah.
The better it feels, the less likely you are to question it, right? Comfort becomes, paradoxically, the enemy of identifying underlying problems.
Ying's reflection on hitting that 100-kilometer-week threshold is so relevant here. She knew intellectually something was off with her form because she kept getting injured on the same side when her mileage got high.
But she was fast.
But she was fast. And that feeling of speed, the success, the hard-won efficiency she felt, it completely overrode the warning signs. It stopped her from scrutinizing the mechanics that were actually causing the problem.
It's like the body's self-correction loops working against us sometimes.
Yeah.
Even think about posture, just sitting or standing. If you develop that common forward head posture, maybe from desk work,
Ildy.
many of us are, the muscles at the back of your neck get lengthened and weak over time. But what do your eyes do automatically?
They adjust to stay level.
Exactly. Your gaze stays horizontal, and that adjustment tricks your brain. It sends a signal saying, yep, we're upright, we're balanced, even though structurally you're out of alignment. The body found the most efficient way to keep your eyes level, not necessarily the healthiest way for your neck and spine.
That distinction, efficiency versus health, seems absolutely critical for runners to grasp. We almost have to learn to be a little suspicious of things feeling too easy or too smooth.
It requires a shift in mindset, from trusting the feeling implicitly to developing a more discerning awareness.
Okay, so if that smooth feeling can be a bit of a lie told by our body's very efficient energy-saving department, then the solution has to be deliberate. It has to be calibration.
That's the word, calibration. It's moving from just passively experiencing the run to actively, consciously refining things, trying to align that subjective feeling of smoothness with objective reality, with mechanically sound, metabolically efficient in a sustainable way, and structurally okay for the long run.
But that sounds uncomfortable.
It absolutely is, initially. And that's the huge psychological hurdle. Calibration demands intentionality. And it almost always involves embracing some temporary discomfort or awkwardness.
Why? Why does changing something have to feel bad at first?
Because you're messing with deeply ingrained patterns. You're asking your nervous system, your proprioceptors, the body's sense of its position in space, to override habits learned over thousands, maybe millions of steps. The body rebels against that change initially because the old way feels familiar and therefore safe or right, even if it's flawed.
And I can imagine for runners who are already pretty experienced, maybe quite fast, that discomfort feels like going backward, like failure.
Precisely. They've poured years into building what feels like an economical, effective gait. The idea of tinkering with it, potentially losing speed or efficiency, even temporarily, that's a scary prospect.
Because we know, right, that making almost any change to your form, at least at first, often makes you less economical. It increases the metabolic cost.
Does you feel clunkier, maybe slower? You have to work harder mentally and physically just to hold your usual pace while trying this new movement pattern? It's a significant psychological trade-off.
Yeah, if you're aiming for a certain race time, a PB, the idea of adding minutes because you're trying to fix your arm swing or foot strike, that's a tough sell.
It really is. You have to trust the process. You have to convince yourself, or be convinced, that this temporary dip in performance, this feeling of awkwardness, is necessary to avoid a much bigger problem down the line, like a major injury that takes you out completely.
Ying's realization about using brute force comes to mind again. She saw she was fighting her own body, muscling through runs instead of utilizing natural momentum and elastic energy.
And fixing that, it meant deliberately slowing down. It meant feeling awkward. It meant accepting for a time that she wasn't as fast. That willingness to be vulnerable, to take a step back, to move forward stronger. That's the essence of calibration.
So let's talk about how these compensations get locked in. You mentioned my old ankle sprain earlier. That didn't just heal and disappear, biomechanically speaking. It likely created a lasting pattern.
Almost certainly. An injury like that, even if the pain is long gone, often leaves residual stiffness, maybe slightly altered range of motion, or even just a neuromuscular memory of guarding that area.
So what might have happened? I felt fine for years after it healed.
Well, let's speculate. Perhaps because that right ankle had slightly less mobility or stability after the sprain, your body unconsciously started relying more on movement at the knee on that side, maybe a bit more rotation or flexion, to make up for the lack of push-off from the ankle.
Okay.
And to control that extra knee movement, or maybe to compensate for a slight instability it caused, the stabilization demand shifted. It might have shifted up the chain, perhaps overloading the structures around the opposite hip.
Leading straight to my left IT band.
Exactly. The body found an efficient way to keep you running at your desired pace despite the ankle limitation. But that solution was structurally costly elsewhere. It felt fine until the cumulative load on the IT band just reached its limit.
That's a perfect example of a pattern feeling efficient but being destructive long-term.
Right.
Like if someone has tight hamstrings or weak glutes.
Right. The body is incredibly adept at bypassing the big, powerful engines, the hips and glutes, if they're not firing properly or are restricted. It'll find ways to generate motion using smaller, less robust structures around the knee or lower back.
Which leads to...
Tightness often develops in the muscles that aren't doing their job, like the hip flexors if the glutes are weak, and pain or strain appears in the areas that are doing too much work, like the knees or shins. And eventually, that flawed pattern just becomes your ingrained, normal way of running.
That case study about Sam in the book is fascinating too, showing how habits outside running can create these issues. He had this super rigid, chin-tucked posture from some previous training.
Yes, it's a brilliant illustration of the kinetic chain, how one part affects everything else. That rigid neck and upper back posture, which felt correct and upright to him.
What did it actually do to his running?
Several things. First, it limited the natural, subtle rotation of the torso that should happen when you run, making the movement less fluid and efficient. More critically, though, it restricted his ability to breathe properly.
How so?
A rigid upper chest and thoracic spine makes it much harder to use the diaphragm effectively for deep belly breathing. So because his primary breathing muscle was hampered, his body had to compensate.
How did it compensate for breathing?
It likely started using accessory breathing muscles in the neck and shoulders more, leading to tension there. And crucially, to try and create space for the lungs to expand, it might have caused him to excessively arch his mid-back, his lumbar spine.
Which sounds like a terrible idea for running.
It is. That increased lower back arch further compromises core stability. It tilts the pelvis anteriorly, which then limits how effectively you can extend your hip backward, the key movement for powerful propulsion.
So it's a whole cascade of negative effects.
Exactly. His good posture led to poor breathing, which led to compensatory back arching, which limited his hip power, forcing him to overuse his knees and likely causing the pain he experienced during harder runs. The solution wasn't simple. It required consciously relaxing muscles he thought were essential for good posture.
It really highlights that if your default normal is based on old habits or compensations, you can't just passively hope it gets better. You need conscious, active intervention to reset it.
That's the core message. Smoothness is dangerous when it becomes a shield, when it stops us from looking closer. We have to shift from just being passive movers, feeling the flow, to becoming conscious practitioners, actively looking for the potential flaws hidden beneath that smooth surface.
We're digging deep into Chapter 14 of The Runner's Paradox today, talking about why smooth isn't always good and the importance of calibration. If this is sparking questions about your own running form and feelings, remember you can explore all these ideas further in the book. Find out more and grab your copy at therunnersparadox.com. Okay, let's get practical.
Right, so we've established the why smoothness can be deceptive because the body prioritizes immediate efficiency. Now let's talk how. How do we actually gather the objective information we need to challenge that subjective feeling? How do we calibrate?
Well, the most accessible and often, like you said, brutal tool is video analysis, just setting up your phone. Ying mentioned how seeing herself on video, especially frame by frame, was a revelation. It showed her things she simply couldn't feel while running.
It's that unbiased mirror, isn't it? It bypasses your brain's interpretation and just shows the raw mechanics. When you review video, you're looking for clues you can't possibly sense in real time.
What are the big red flags to look for on video?
Think about the 3 sins of inefficiency. First, excessive vertical oscillation. Are you bouncing up and down too much? That's wasted energy that could be going forward. Second, look at the feet. Is there noticeable foot spin or rotation upon landing or push-off? That often points to instability or lack of control higher up, maybe in the hips.
Okay, bounce and spin. What's the third?
Excessive rotation or cross-body movement in the upper body. Are your arms swinging wildly across your midline? Is your torso twisting too much? Again, that's energy leaking out sideways instead of propelling you forward, and it can create shearing forces down the chain.
So video is one tool. What about measurable data? Things like cadence seem really popular now.
Cadence, yeah, steps per minute. It's one of the most direct metrics we can track and potentially modify.
Yeah.
That magic number 180 gets thrown around a lot.
Is a 180 really the goal for everyone?
Not necessarily the goal, but the principle behind it is sound. Generally, a higher cadence, closer to that 180 mark, correlates with several benefits that reduce injury risk.
Such as?
Shorter ground contact time, less time spent loading the joints, reduced braking forces when your foot first hits the ground, and less vertical bounce. Put together, this usually means lower overall impact forces traveling up your legs.
And there's research backing this up.
Absolutely. Newer studies, even from 2024, looking at gait retraining confirm this. They've shown that even just a modest increase, say 5%, in a runner's preferred cadence can significantly decrease peak impact forces, especially at the tibia, potentially lowering the risk of stress injuries, even in runners who felt perfectly fine before.
But, and this feels like a big but, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to run at 180 steps per minute now, right? Isn't there a danger in just forcing it?
Huge danger. That's the critical mistake many runners make. Simply trying to force faster steps without addressing the underlying strength and control needed to support that faster turnover. You're often just trading one problem for another.
How does that manifest? What goes wrong if you force cadence?
Well, if you lack the hip flexor strength to quickly snap your leg forward, or the glute strength to pull it back underneath you efficiently, you might compensate. You might start arching your lower back more, that anterior pelvic tilt, to artificially shorten the distance your leg needs to travel. Or you might see knees collapsing inwards because the hip stabilizers can't keep up with the faster rate.
So you create new stresses.
Exactly. New, potentially worse, loading patterns. Optimizing cadence isn't just about moving your feet faster, it's about having the specific strength, the neuromuscular coordination, and the aerobic capacity to sustain that faster, more efficient pattern.
Okay, so video, cadence. What about deliberately messing with our stride? Intentional gait perturbation, as the book calls it, like changing the running surface.
Yeah, varying the environment is a fantastic way to challenge your neuromuscular system and build resilience. We mentioned running on gravel earlier.
Right, increasing leg stiffness.
Yes. But beyond that, running on any unstable or unpredictable surface trails, grass, sand forces, those small stabilizing muscles in your feet, ankles, and hips to wake up and work harder. They have to react constantly.
Unlike running on a perfectly flat road or treadmill.
Exactly. On a treadmill, your body can lock into one very specific repetitive pattern. Introduce variable terrain, and you force adaptability. You build neuromuscular responsiveness. That's a key component of what we might call sustainable smoothness, the ability to adapt, not just to repeat.
How can we get better at actually sensing these things ourselves, those subtle asymmetries or weaknesses, maybe before they become full-blown injuries? Can we do that on easy runs?
You definitely can, but it requires tuning in. Start with really simple body awareness drills off the run, like the single leg stance test described in the book. Just stand on one leg in front of a mirror.
What am I looking for?
Watch your hips. Does the hip on the side of the leg you lifted immediately drop down? Or does the hip of your standing leg jut way out to the side? Both are usually clear signs of weakness in the gluteus medius and core stabilizers on that standing side.
And if I can't stabilize just standing still,
You certainly won't be able to stabilize effectively when you're dynamically loading that leg with 2 to 3 times your body weight during running. It's a basic check that reveals a lot.
we also need to become better detectives, right?
Sure.
Reading the clues our body leaves behind, not just shoe wear, but other signs.
Absolutely. Look beyond the soles of your shoes, although they tell a story too. Pay attention to your feet themselves. Are you developing thick calluses under the ball of your foot? That can indicate you're pushing off too much with your forefoot and toes, maybe because you're not getting enough drive from your hips.
Okay, what about friction, chafing?
Persistent chafing, especially in places like the inner thighs, under the arms, or around the waistband, can signal excessive movement. Too much rotation, arms swinging across the body, maybe pelvic instability causing legs to adduct too much. It's a sign of energy being wasted through unnecessary motion.
And that heavy foot strike, that sort of clomping sound some runners make?
Yeah, that heavy landing, or an audible foot slap, is almost always a sign of overstriding. It means your foot is landing too far out in front of your center of mass, typically with a straighter knee.
Which acts like a brake.
Exactly. You're essentially hitting the brakes with every single step. It increases impact forces dramatically and is the opposite of smooth, efficient forward momentum. It often suggests your center of mass is too far back, maybe due to weak glutes or poor core control leading to that posterior pelvic tilt while running. Sustainable smoothness needs to be responsive, fluid, adaptable, built on strength.
Which brings us back to strength training. It's mentioned so often, but the key is making sure that strength actually helps our running form, right? Not just making us stronger in the gym in isolation.
That translation is everything. Just because you can lift heavy doesn't automatically mean you'll run better or smoother. For runners, the focus should generally be on closed chain exercises.
Define closed chain again.
That's where your foot or hand is fixed against a surface. Think squats, lunges, deadlifts, step-ups, push-ups. These are generally more functional for running than open chain exercises, like using a leg extension or hamstring curl machine where your foot is free in the air.
Why the preference for closed chain?
Because they inherently require multiple joints and multiple muscle groups, agonists, antagonists, stabilizers, to work together in a coordinated fashion. That coordination mimics the demands of running far better than isolating a single muscle. A hamstring curl isolates the hamstring, but when you run, your hamstring has to work seamlessly with your glutes, quads, core, everything.
So it's about teaching the muscles to communicate and work together efficiently, less about just brute force of one muscle group.
Precisely. It's about building coordinated strength patterns. And underpinning all of this, especially for efficient forward propulsion, is pelvic control and core strength.
Why is the pelvis so key?
Because a stable pelvis is the foundation for everything. It allows you to maintain that slight forward lean like a moving plank, letting gravity assist you. It provides a solid base for your powerful glute muscles to extend the hip effectively and drive you forward.
And if the pelvis isn't stable,
If your core is weak and your pelvis wobbles or tilts excessively with each step, all that potential power generated by your legs gets dissipated. It leaks out through unstable hips or excessive rotation in the lower back. You end up muscling through with your quads and calves instead of using the big engines in your hips. Strengthening that core and posterior chain allows power to come from the hips, not the knees and ankles. That's how you build smoothness that's actually sound. So we've really unpacked that the goal isn't necessarily achieving some textbook perfect rigid form. True calibration, true sustainable smoothness is more about increasing your body's resilience. It's about expanding the range, as the book puts it, the range in which you can run without symptoms, without pain.
Yeah, delaying fatigue, reducing that injury risk, and ultimately spending more time actually enjoying the run.
Exactly.
So before we wrap up this exploration, we wanted to leave you, the listener, with 5 practical questions. Think of these as tools for self-scrutiny, ways to gently challenge that potentially deceptive feeling of smoothness on your next run.
Okay, question 1. Think back. When was the last time a run felt absolutely great, perfectly smooth, maybe even easy? But then a day or two later, an unexpected niggle, tightness, or flare-up appeared. If that's happened recently, it's a sign your feeling might not match the reality.
Question 2. Do you automatically equate easy with good or correct when it's used to your running feel? If a run feels effortless, do you just assume your form must be perfect? Why do you make that association? Maybe challenge that a bit.
Third, look at the objective evidence. What do your persistent shoe wear patterns tell you? Or areas where you consistently get chafing? Or even just how you look in recent race photos. Is there a noticeable lean arm swing asymmetry? What clues are your body and your gear leaving about your ingrained movement habits?
Question 4. Are there specific parts of your stride, maybe how your foot leaves the ground or your shoulder carriage or even how you breathe that you've simply never ever questioned because, well, they just feel fine, areas you've taken for granted?
And number 5, what would it actually look like for you to consciously evolve your running smoothness? Not by chasing some rigid ideal of perfection, but by focusing on making it more responsive, more adaptable, more resilient. What small changes could build robustness without demanding perfection?
These are great questions to carry into your next run. And thinking about motion and mechanics naturally leads us to think about, well, the opposite. This whole conversation was about what happens while we're running.
But what about when we stop?
Exactly. Next time, we're stepping off the road entirely. We're going to explore mile 15, which delves into the paradox of stillness in a sport that's obsessed with constant motion.
It's a fascinating shift. We'll look at how our off-the-road life, how you sit in your desk, your sleep habits, your stress levels, your mental space, how all of that profoundly shapes your running form, your injury risk, and your overall running health. It connects the stillness to the movement.
It sounds like a crucial piece of the puzzle. So if today's conversation about calibrating your form got you thinking, remember, this whole series draws from the runner's paradox. Head over to therunnersparadox.com for more info and to get your hands on the book.
Yeah, take these ideas, especially those questions, into your next run or your next reflection time. Don't just focus on how it feels. Ask how it's actually performing when you look a little closer.
Definitely. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss mile 15. Leave us a review if you're enjoying it, and we'll catch you next time. Run strong, run smart, and maybe run a little more aware.
See you next mile.